controversial subjects with the facts can be tense, but we are a science here to make things make sense.
Okay, let's go.
So, where shall we begin?
I wish I could produce, but I can't.
What do you mean? Oh,
like,
breast
I've always
milk.
like it's like, oh, it's just so
music?
cool. It's just so cool. I wish I could produce.
I forgot what we were
too.
talking about, to be honest. We're here and we're going to talk about breast milk in many different ways. Some very interesting things. I think first we're going to actually just talk about it.
Okay.
Right? As like a substance, as like
Secretion.
a nutritional source, as is a secretion?
Isn't that a good way of putting it? It
Yes,
is a
it
secretion.
is. And then, like we said, we're going to talk about bodybuilders and their use of it. We're going to talk about just its general health and safety and some new concerns. Where do you want to start?
So, breast milk. What is it? Milk from the breast of a human.
Imagine that's all you said.
Yeah.
And
so,
that's it.
The mammary glands.
Mammary?
Mammary heart.
Mammary.
Mammary glands, which produce the milk. So they were likely before mammals. So breast milk's essentially been around for like millions of years. It predates mammals. So before mammals, it was likely that they were sweat glands that eventually adapt to produce special antimicrobial coatings for eggs. Then over time, when animals like mammals stopped producing eggs and started to like have a placenta, they started to secrete this white liquid instead, likely breast milk. So like the evolution of it.
Right. So they wouldn't have been mammals at the time, but you just mean like through the evolutionary history of our ancestors.
Yeah, like how did we start squirting stuff out of our tits?
Right.
Like it was likely a sweat gland, like that kind of thing, because it's not like those things just, like, happen. And it's considered a medicine. So it's a food, but it's also considered a medicine because it has like immunological properties, antimicrobial properties, and it's a form of hydration. And then a lot of people who study breast milk consider it, a way to think about it is that there's a famous book too, it's white blood. So it's like without red blood cells, pretty much everything else that's in it is like what's in your human blood and all the things that like help keep you alive, minus your red blood cells.
Say again, like in breast milk? Is that what you're saying?
Like
it's like red blood. Wait,
yeah.
What?
No, sorry. It's like your human blood, all of the nutrients
without the red blood cells.
Red blood cells.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
It's like one way to think about it quickly. Obviously, there are caveats, but that's like that's a pretty like umbrella way to think about it.
Okay.
And yeah, it's like full of so much good stuff, full of proteins, full of carbohydrates, tons of fat. Half the calories are polyunsaturated fats, polyunsaturated fatty acids, because your brain is pretty much like fat, like, and it needs polyunsaturated fatty acids to wrap the neurons. So it's like a bunch of these specific fats that are great for neuronal development for the baby's brain.
And just like calorie density, right? Like it's interesting because obviously we haven't had a baby, but now we're having friends that are having babies and realizing what that means in terms of, you know, as soon as the baby's born, as it starts losing weight, because you're no longer like feeding it through like internally, and now you have to feed it breast milk, and there's always that fear around making sure it's eating enough. Obviously, breast milk is like such an amazing supplement or nutritional
and
source.
Delicious
secretion, but I wasn't really aware of like how, until having, you know, both of our sisters had kids and now our friends are having kids, like how intense that can be for some people.
Yeah.
And like getting a baby to latch properly, making sure it's eating and not knowing it's eating unless you're weighing it literally, because you can't necessarily always see. And this may just be ignorance because I'm a man, but I feel like also especially obvious because we don't have kids and have never had to deal with it firsthand.
I want tits so bad. I want mammary glands. It would be so much. Like, obviously, I enjoy my male privilege. I'm happy that I'm a man because my life is so much easier. But I would love to breastfeed. Like, what a gorgeous, amazing human thing to do, to breastfeed a kid. Like, that's the only thing that we're lacking with our male privilege, is that one gorgeous gift on earth.
Yeah, no, I think it's so amazing to be able to like provide from your body. And I do think that is a challenge. Even I've seen in like straight friends or straight people, men in particular, I mean, because like they don't get to have that bonding experience. And I think it's a pretty common thing that fathers often feel inadequate at the beginning, because they can help the wife, they can, or, you know, their partner, but like they cannot provide what the baby needs.
Yeah.
But that's not to say that like lots of babies are also raised on formula, and fathers can be part of many different, and mothers can pump.
And if we adopt a baby, we're going to have to give it formula. Like
exactly. So I just
formula is also great.
But it is such an amazing, obviously, like, not only you're feeding a baby, like in the mother, there's like hormones going off that are like
and just
connecting
life.
you to
You're just
it.
like, I'm giving life through my tit. Like, that I would love to say that I have done that in my life.
Or
and
that you even could, yeah.
We never will give life through our tits.
Yeah.
And that's sucks.
Yeah, I guess we could give it through our dicks. But
yeah, that's all we do. And it's like not, I mean, it's fun, but it's not the same.
Yeah, it's not as like connected.
No. And it's like if you want to try and like be like to your kid, like, I created you by coming in your they're gonna be like, no, I don't wanna hear that. But being like, I breastfed you, it's kind of like, oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think kids don't really want to hear about that, but as you get older, it's easier
I think it's
to
like, I would way rather hear about how
yeah, obviously.
Yeah, that's all I'm saying is that like men's situation in all of this childbirth is nil to none. But also, human breast milk is actually not that fatty dense compared to other mammals. Like, for example, rabbits, they like put their babies in I was gonna say the ground, but I'm like, yeah, the like
a
dens,
den, yeah.
And they leave them for long periods of time. So when they breastfeed them, they're like designed to give them a
like
little bit
so
of milk,
much?
and then they
give
go
them
away
away?
for long periods of time, and the baby's fine.
You mean, oh, I see. It's just like more dense.
Yeah, whereas
More calorie
because
dense.
primates have evolved to carry their young on them, you need. That's why we as humans have to breastfeed so much, because it's actually quite diluted. It's a very like hydrating. Obviously, it has lots of fat and stuff, but you have to continually breastfeed your kid because we've evolved to have them literally attached to us. Whereas other mammals, they go, here's some milk, tit, 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 and then they leave for like 6 hours and the babies are fine. So it's like, in the world of mammals, our breast milk is very watery, which I thought was kind of cool.
It's like the oat milk of the milk family.
Yes, and it really, I'm like, it had a nutty, oaty, delicious vanilla flavor. It was the best White Russian I've ever had in my life. The breast milk White Russian. But there's no vitamin D in it, so you have to like have your kid exposed to like, a bit of sun.
Without burning them. Because now everyone's also terrified of their kids, like, putting sunscreen on them and poisoning them with sunscreen. Yeah. Because of the fear of like it going in the bloodstream. But then B, also getting too much sun and getting like, damaged skin.
Yeah. Like obviously don't like roast your kid in the sun, but there's no vitamin D.
I feel like that. I know we've done podcasts on sunscreen, but even I flip back and forth where I'm like, I don't want to wear sunscreen always because I like want to get vitamin D. But then I'm also paranoid about like it destroying my skin and giving me skin cancer.
Oh my God, I'm so in the other camp as the white scared of the sun. It's like, I'm getting the vitamin D. I'm fine. If I'm ever in the situation where I'm like needing to put on sunscreen, I'm not worried about vitamin D.
But we live in a place of the world. I guess you're right. Like in the winter, it's different though.
Yeah, in the winter, I'm not slathering on sunscreen. And I am when I'm going skiing, I am.
Some people say to do all the time.
So exposed to the sun. Like when you ski, you're so exposed to the sun.
I guess.
Because the sunlight's literally reflecting off of the snow.
I know, but it's just such an interesting thing that why does it feel so good to be in the sun? Okay, we've talked
about
this.
Well, it doesn't.
Before.
Like I literally hate it. Okay, anyway.
But I love it.
I know. I'm just saying I hate it. It's not.
Like speaking of nutrition, do you want me to talk a little bit about this bodybuilding stuff, or do you have a few more things you wanted to say? I can't tell.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. Let me finish for the baby so that intellectually people understand. Okay, and then we'll go into like
baby to bodybuilder pipeline.
Yeah. So, colostrum, which is the stuff that first comes out.
Yes, which I didn't know about till our sisters had to go through this.
Yeah, and it was like intense. So like that's like very antiseptic. It has like all these antibodies in it, and it like coats the baby's like esophagus and their microbiome to be like, okay, like it like lines
you're alive.
Yeah, and then it slowly becomes fattier and fattier like as it goes on. Sorry, when you start like latching kid to tea, the actual feeding session, though, there will start to become more fat produced near the end of the feeding session to help the baby be like, oh, I'm full. So even within feeds, it becomes more fatty, and it's like helping the baby be like, me done. And then also just that there's a bunch of stuff in breast milk that feeds your microbiome, literally is indigestible to humans, is designed to go into your gut and feed the right bacteria. So anyways, I'm like, yeah, I did shots of breast milk and I'm proud of it. Okay, now let's get into why I probably shouldn't. And
it's just pretty amazing to think about. I mean, it is worth knowing, and I'll touch on this later in one of my studies, that the quality of breast milk is actually related to the nutrition of the mother as well.
Yeah.
And so they're like talking about like bodybuilders. So basically, but there's like a niche part of the bodybuilding world that drinks breast milk for their gains.
You're telling me there is bodybuilders who drink breast milk for their gains?
Yeah. So it's become this thing where there was even a Netflix episode, a show called Unwell, documenting this. And the basic premise is that, breast milk is calorie dense and nutrient nutrient dense, and that, you know, a lot of these people will say like has special properties, and if it can make a baby grow and it has growth hormones in it.
I mean, this is me on Saturday night when I was drinking breast
Yeah,
milk.
you were like, I feel amazing.
Yeah, like my Jack, you see my pics?
So there's this community out there, and obviously this is like, I don't know the size of this community, but it's not like,
well, we know they're jacked, so they're big guys.
Who are taking it, believing that it's like helping them get bigger, better.
Where are they getting it?
So they're literally getting it basically off the black market or off of like Facebook Marketplace, like buying it from breastfeeding mothers.
Okay,
so that's one of the problems, first of all, is that like breast milk is a limited source. We can't start like being like, everyone should be drinking breast milk from mothers because it's going to help you be healthy and stay fit. Like, there is not a market for this. It's expensive.
Me pretending to be grossed out, but secretly like can't wait till later to go
Google this and see. But okay, so like breast milk, as you said, it has a lot in it. It's a cup of breast milk is about 170 calories, which is 20 more than whole milk per a cup.
It's arguably a superfood. We're talking
10 grams of fat, 16 grams of carbs, 2 grams of protein, which is 5 less than whole milk. So it's interesting that bodybuilders are like leaning into something that has less protein than an alternative.
It's got immunoglobulin. They're probably doing it for like the immune.
Yeah, I think in their minds they're thinking it's a good nutritional source that probably has some kind of like magical abilities because
there's whey proteins in it. They love whey protein.
And it's like you think of, okay, this is like essentially designed by the human body to help a baby. What's the answer? Should you do it? I mean, no.
It should be for babies. Like, it's designed for babies.
So, like, it's not as though there's not a possibility that breast milk, it's not like it's bad. It's not like you would die, or that it's like not good for you. There is no evidence for it being better than any other alternative.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean like maybe studies might show, okay, it actually provided some benefit. So it's not saying like the benefit can't exist. It's just saying actually there is no evidence right now.
I feel bad, but the bodybuilding community is not where I'm looking to for the answers to anything. No offense, boys.
Well, so then like I said, because it's being bought off of, you know, quote unquote, the black market, or just in places that are not regulated, like it's not coming from a provider other than somebody themselves in their own home. Not all of it's created equal. So if the person who's creating the breast milk is not nutritionally taking care of themselves, that will transfer into the breast milk. It can be contaminated given that it's not being stored in a sterile environment. So they actually did a study of 101 samples purchased online. 10% of them were topped off with cow's milk or baby formula. So as people just like selling
I would
stuff.
do that if someone bought it off mine. I'd be like, milk in here.
75% had pathogenic or disease-causing bacteria and viruses in it because they weren't probably kept sterile. Like, obviously,
it was
like
going bad.
Yeah, and like it's like you think of where you buy your milk and stuff. Like that stuff's regulated.
Yeah, the milk that was given to me was frozen and immediately went right into my fridge. Then,
but even then, it's like practices. You don't know, there could, like, a lot of these even had feces in them because it's people handling things in their own home in an environment that's not like a sterile factory or a sterile place where you're producing a product that has to be up to the standard of like the food associations. Do you know what I mean? So there's just a risk there. Yeah, ultimately there's just no evidence. It doesn't, again, mean that we might not find one day in studies that it gives you like some benefit, but
no,
right
it's
now
not.
there's nothing.
It's like, no, okay, I'm just saying, I'm putting my foot and my left tit down and saying no. Like, breast milk should be for babies. It's designed for babies.
Well, I mean, we drink cow's milk. It's not as though...
No, but like, okay, if you think about the world, like, it's a serious issue.
Yeah.
Like, we can now start talking about like formula.
True.
And like
the shortages of formula.
Yeah, like there are places like Brazil where like mothers who, like back in the past, they would have like wet mothers who would like breastfeed the babies of other people while those other people did jobs or like whatever. Like, and that is like important in some ways. And I read about how in Brazil they actually have this type of thing where there's people will save breast milk for other babies who need it. Like, that's the thing. I'm like, the bodybuilders don't need it.
Right.
Like, that's a no from me.
And there are so many other sources that are already available to bodybuilders, whether that's whay protein, whether that's creatine. Like, there's supplements that can give you energy, like caffeine, things that can help you working out. So.
And even like, yeah, and I know I'm yelling considering I did just drink breast milk as an adult. Like, why am I pretending that I'm like... But it was so funny that even with her, I was like, I hope to God there's not a day where she's like, I need more breast milk. And I'm like, there I am partying with my white vodka and breast milk. But yeah, like so when it comes to formula, the history of formula is so interesting. I learned about it this week. So like our parents I don't know what they were, but they likely were formula fed because it was like in the early 50s, 60s.
It's very popular.
It was essentially Nestle. Let's
Here
try
we go,
Like, here we go, Nestle. We're going to talk about the Amazon.
Name one good thing they've done.
Truly nothing. Like, okay, I guess Kit Kats taste pretty good. Like, that's it. So, like, once, and here I am. Actually, it's science. Boo, science. Literally, men in science and the Enlightenment, they started to understand, oh my God, things are made up of like fats and carbs and protein. And they started to realize, like, oh, breast milk's made of fats and carbs and protein. Wait a second. The name formula is literally because they figured out the formula of fats and carbs and protein.
Interesting. And how to mimic or model actual breast milk.
And then they started to say, these scientists, these predominantly male scientists, that it was better than breast milk.
Because it was like perfectly constructed.
And also, literally, because they're dumbass men, they said things like, women's like bad tempers can sour the milk. They literally were like, if you can pass on your like personality through your tits. So like if you got a wet nurse that is like quote unquote poor, like there's like things that like literally scientists were saying in the Enlightenment. If you had a wet nurse who was poor, then your kid's going to become poor.
Passing that down to them.
Like, you know, like horrible. A lot of it was like extremely racist, like messed up shit. Welcome to science. Welcome to the Enlightenment. It wasn't that enlightened. They then figure out, wait, we can make a bunch of money off this. Nestle spearheads it, and they start selling formula, saying it's better than breast milk. And like only 1 in 4 kids in America in the 1950s were breastfed.
Wow.
Because it was formula at the time was being pitched as this
the better alternative.
Yeah. And it had come a long way. Like there were times like babies would die if the parents weren't able to breastfeed. Cracked nipples could kill you before like antibiotics. Like there was a reason why this could be beneficial in society, but of course Nestle capitalism takes over and it becomes awful. Then the 60s, 70s, the hippie movement, people start to be like, companies
go
are
back
bad.
To natural.
Yeah, but also being like, do we trust Nestle? Like prior to that, people were obsessed with like companies. Like literally companies were like religion at the time. Like that's what Mad Men's kind of
Still
about. Still are now to some people who are like, Elon Musk's gonna save us or whatever. So yeah, then Nestle starts going to like poorer countries and starts selling their formula because they're losing the market of America. And then the formula requires clean water. And there's this crazy, like people say that Nestle killed millions of kids because they went to these countries, sold it, said it was better, but it required mixing it with clean water, which these countries didn't have. And there's a really famous court case where there's a quote where the guy, he's from Nestle. They're like, does this formula, is this dangerous if there's not clean water? And he's like, it's clearly instructed that like he's like in court, is this dangerous? And he's like, yes, it's dangerous. And then everyone like kind of was like, oh my God, Nestle's evil. One of the many reasons.
Imagine being those people. Like there's all these like companies and people that go on behalf of them just to lie or avoid questions.
They get paid so much.
But like, I hope those people realize that's their legacy.
I know.
That you're the, like, also you see it with even Google and stuff. And I know we're posting this stuff on like platforms that you like, they're always brought to court and you're like, no, they're, and Facebook and you just like, no, they're being like, no, we don't spread propaganda at all. Like our algorithms definitely don't send people down a pipeline of becoming crazy people. And you're like, we know it does that.
Yeah.
Just say it. But like
they have to justify it. Here we go. Side note, everyone. Side note. They have to justify it somehow. So like if I think of someone working at Nestle, it's like, well, people need formula. So we're making formula, and formula is actually important for queer parents, for parents who can't breastfeed. It's actually an amazing alternative source that we've made as humans. Like that's what they do in their head. But then they ignore their legacy. I
know. I mean, you might be right. I don't know. I'm true, but obviously there's also like the oil industry and cigarette industry that sat in court and were like, yeah, there's nothing. These don't do bad things. Yeah. These are purely good, and we have no evidence that they do bad things, even though they were the ones who realized like cigarettes kill.
Yeah, that's why I find capitalism and money so menacing, because people who are obsessed with like wealth or like taking a photo on a yacht, for example, like to me it's all connected. It's like, isn't that embarrassing? Because to like, you know what I mean? You can only ever access that amount of money at the expense of other people. Like that is how capitalism works. So people who are interested in wealth, always, it's like I have a uncomfortable reaction when people talk about money and wealth as good, because it's to me like a thing that's like you have such a moral blind spot. And I mean, it happens now with our friends. Like people are starting to make money. People are like, my aspiration is to like own like a fancy car,
right?
And it's
or
like really, and it's hard for me to like. Also, we're so lucky and wealthy through like I got to get rich teaching science, which has always been my dream. Like I'm so lucky, so I don't have to like. It's
easier to learn that lesson once you've been able to go through it and realize it's not. You can see, like we've been in spaces to see how disgusting it can be.
Yeah.
To see people like hoarding wealth and then wasting wealth in the most ridiculous, gross ways.
It's
on
crazy.
Yachts.
It's crazy.
With food. With whatever.
And we've seen it actually. Like now that I'm thinking about it, like we were just at this like YouTuber convention, and it was like. I was like on the bus leaving, and I was like, I need to get I've like had a visceral. I was like, I need to get the fuck out of here, because every conversation happening around me
about money.
Was about how they're gonna get more money, more clicks, like, and it's like no one is stopping at any moment to be like, this is sick. Everyone's obsessed with Mr. Beast, who just like spends a bunch of money and like fucking makes a burger company like after Team Trees. Like it's weird. There's such a disconnect between. Like it's success as good versus like like destroying the planet is like the only way it can work. And like Nestle is just a great example. And I think that there's a lot of those people who worked at Nestle to bring it back who were, you know, being told, wow, you're so successful. Look at your gorgeous home. You've provided for your kids. You've created an amazing life for yourself. You're good job.
Yeah.
But then they're like, sad. But a bunch of kids died. Literal babies died. But now formula is like it has more different issues, because what happened in America with the recent formula shortage was different states would have like legal contracts of like only places to make specific formula, because it has to be so regulated. And then that one major factory had like issues and had to be shut down. And then it was like, oh my God. So there was actual formula shortages, which is really scary because people we rely on it.
Yeah, there's that's what makes these conversations hard sometimes, because it's like nothing is black and white. There is good, like that's entangled into capitalist structures and structures that exploit other parts of society, right? And so it's like hard to be like, well, we can't say like get rid of formula because Nestle is like capitalizing on it and exploiting people and exploiting worker conditions for this and destroying communities for this. Like it is hard, because it's like, and that is what like even people say when it's like some countries are like totally destroyed by tourism, but then everyone's like, but if you just take away tourism, you destroy the country.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like everything is cyclical, and it's like much harder to like get out of those sticky situations.
Well, that's kind of like Bette Midler got like a little canceled because I think what she was thinking was, okay, formula equals companies equals Nestle equals bad. And when this formula shortage happened, she tweeted something
just
like well, how long have you ever heard of like breast milk? And
Yeah.
then what I learned from that was that breastfeeding is actually a socioeconomic issue, because only rich people can do it, because you need to have access to time. In America, you don't even have
if you're away from your kids, if you're having to work all the time.
They get like a month or something. Like sick. Like in Canada,
crazy.
We have an actual functioning society that is socialist, and you get a year or more. In America, you don't get that. So in order to breastfeed your kid, you need to be able to take that time off work. You need to be able to essentially hire people to look after your life while you do that, which I thought was super interesting. And they were like, Bette Midler, why you got canceled was the right tweet would have been, we need to have a year off of work paid by the government in order to actually have a conversation about breastfeeding.
And even beyond that, it's like sometimes babies don't latch. Sometimes it's families that don't have a breastfeeding person that can provide for the baby. So you're right. I get that she was trying to probably be like, say something in another perspective that was looking at like, stop relying on these companies. But it's like
she was actually ripping on poor and marginalized people in America
without realizing
without realizing. I know, because it's Bette Midler. She did not realize. We know that Bette Midler,
and that will always happen. It will always happen as we as society are able to talk more and understand more deeply and intricately the way that these issues like intertwine and like what do you say, like catapult downwards. Do you know what I mean? Like
trickle down.
Trickle down. It honestly is. You see it every generation where it's like, first we can talk about like queer rights, and then we can start, or gay rights, and then we can start realizing, well, there's lots of things underneath that are actually, now that we've reached this point, we
now
can talk
that
about
a white
more.
gay hot man like he's always going to start with
Exactly.
like a white man.
There's like deeper issues that a society can start to understand. Speaking about sort of like the insidious part of capitalism, this ties into my next study because it's actually about microplastics, which have been found in human breast milk for the first time, which is spooky, obviously. So this is obviously concerning because we aren't even totally sure what microplastics do to like adult health, and we're finding them like actually really recently this year they found microplastics in human blood for the first time.
Wow. And they might shrink taints, boys. So let's think about that. Your dick's going to get smaller.
And so it's like, what is this doing to breastfeeding babies? We don't know. Like, we don't know for sure to what degree it will hurt or not hurt. But that's obviously just concerning now that we're finding it in breast milk. It's like there is plastic literally on every corner of this earth. And in this study,
in your tag,
they could only study to a certain like size of microplastic, and they were like, that's not even that small. There's definitely even more if you like can break it down even further.
God damn.
In this study, which wasn't on like a ton of women or people who are breastfeeding, but there was 75% of these breastfeeding people had microplastics in them. 75%.
Oh my God.
Obviously, in labs, there are known toxic effects of microplastics on human cells, lab animals, marine wildlife. But again, they said in living beings, we don't know what. Like, can you just get rid of it? Does your body just digest it?
That's going to be something in our lifetime we're going to understand so much more about.
Something that was kind of freaky was they also were correlating or following the mother's plastic environment. So like they were like, okay, what are some of the mothers buying more plastic products, eating more seafood, like all those things? What's in their homes? What are they interacting with? It was not correlated with that at all.
Oh my God, there's like granola mummies with their little like
it just means
wooden
that
Tupperwares. Still
the study was like basically it's inevitable that humans are just being exposed to microplastics without necessarily like even if you're trying to avoid it, which is
oh my God, if you like. Remember when we did that video where we wore all the plastic that we used in a week? Like, it's horrifying. Within like, we started it, and within like an hour, you're like, holy
covered in plastic.
It's everywhere.
Everything is plastic.
And even the funniest things, the Nature magazine I subscribe to comes wrapped in plastic. Literally, the cover of it will be like the plastic problem. I'm like why the fuck did you wrap this in plastic? And it's because they want to add the back of like a subscription thing. It's like, get rid of that.
Yeah.
Or
they're probably thinking, oh, it might get ruined in the process. Like,
but it's just like, it's insane. It's like the only magazine that comes in plastic.
Exactly. That is
the
really
New Yorker
weird.
Doesn't.
I want to say
pages.
two things. So the study and the researchers gave a very big caveat, and this is what they said. It must be stressed that the advantages of breastfeeding are much greater than the disadvantages caused by the presence of polluting microplastics. Studies like ours must not reduce breastfeeding of children, but instead raise public awareness to pressure politicians to promote laws that reduce pollution. So they were like, we don't want this to be used to encourage to make people afraid of their breast
formula from your plastic formula bottle, like it's not going to be.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was like reading about this, and someone was telling their story about when they started being like, oh, I want to reduce the plastic in my life. I'm going to switch to glass this, glass that. And then they were like starting to realize how everything is plastic. Just like, I think until you start to actually try and remove plastic from your life,
insane.
You immediately are like, everything is
well, because you think like you're like, okay, I'm not gonna do takeout because that's like you like we've trained ourselves to see plastic in these specific things. It's like takeout bad, plastic straw bad, but just then you're like then you literally
look
just
in this room.
do
my computer
anything.
is made of plastic. This is made of plastic. The sign is made of plastic. My shirt's made of plastic. The light is made of plastic. The camera's made of plastic. Like
but
your glasses are made of plastic.
I don't even mean like that's freaking me out now because I'm like I wasn't even thinking about the objects. I'm thinking of even just like over there, like the granola bar that I bought that has, that's advertised.
All of our food's wrapped in plastic.
Like it's freaking granola ass healthy shit. They're individually wrapped, and it's like what the fuck.
Even the box is probably coated in plastic so that it won't get wet.
Freshly squeezed orange juice I bought, boom, plastic. I'm just looking over there.
So and we've talked about this before. It's like
all those markers.
Literally everything. Yeah. Everything is plastic.
Oh, and clothing.
That's what I said already.
Oh, you did. Yeah, polyester.
Like
also,
clothing.
it's made Plastics made from oil. Okay, wow.
But it is hard because it's like obviously it's an amazing invention on one hand,
Yeah.
like, and can be so important in some environments to have a sterile like hospital environment using plastic sheets and those kind of
That's
things.
why Rachel Salt, the queen of all queens, has always
Yes.
said you have to treat it like gold.
Totally.
And we
yeah.
don't treat it like
how do
gold,
we use
treat
it
like
in the
waste.
right? Well, I mean, it's also so light. Like when you compare the shipping costs of glass and heavier substances, and plastic's moldable, and like there's so many amazing qualities about it. But then it is just like, is it poisoning us?
Yeah. Wow. That was a good ad. Breastfeeding took us all over.
Mm-hmm.
That was great.
Okay,
let's go.
Final thoughts, or you just
No,
want to say
my
goodbye?
brain started to go elsewhere. We started to talk about something, and I started to think about the movie Bros. And I was like, we don't need to get into that.
Okay.
Let's just say, gay people, let's learn how to market our movies without being like, you must say it. Okay.
Okay. Thanks all for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.